All right. So welcome. Today I'll be talking about the Unfolding a Smartphone, which is a Civics of Technology project that is now up on our curriculum page. My name is Ryan Smits. I'm a teaching fellow, graduate assistant at the University of North Texas. A lot of my interests are in digital learning environments, educational technology, and just like how much that affects the way we learn and the relationships that we can develop with people. So yesterday, Dan and Marie had us do that visioning activity where we thought about what kind of future we would want with technology. And when I do that visioning, I don't really think about the technology itself, but I think more about the relationships that we have with technology. And to me, it needs to be this convivial relationship where technology is not pushing us in one direction or another, or forcing us to do something, or causing us to like radically transform our lives, but where we are, in control. We're the agents of change. And so kind of like where I'm thinking on this is I'm in my 30s. I, grew up in the kind of the computer heyday. And I'm like the generation that I feel like social media really started like cutting its teeth on to like figure out like how can we push and nudge and shift people to do things. So I remember like, MySpace, Zynga, all of that. I remember getting my first cell phone when I was 16, and I just absolutely hated it because all of a sudden my parents could call me anytime, anywhere. And like, I would just start turning it off and leaving it at home. And like, I'm like, I don't want this in my life, always interrupting where I'm at in the moment. And, just throughout the years of going to teenage into adulthood, seeing the smartphone and its, capacity more or less starting in 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone, just seeing this ooze of digital virtuality just creep out into everything. And this has been going on in the back of my head for over a decade of just like, what relationship do I want with technology? What is it doing to me? What is it doing to us as a society? And I feel like this unfolding a smartphone lesson, it starts getting at some of those questions in a palatable, approachable way. So some of the things that have shaped my thinking over the years, see some inspiration influence. So I got to put Ruha Benjamin first because like I read that Race After Technology, and just the discriminatory design, it really like shows just like how much is underneath the surface of devices and code and things that like we're kind of told are neutral, and it depends on people use it, but they have their own direction, they have their own force. Sophia Noble, Sherry Turkle, Dana Boyd, they're all influential in how I think about like kind of the social impacts of like kind of our day-to-day lives. Neil Postman, Kirkpatrick Sale, who wrote extensively about the Luddites. I hesitated putting his name on there, but I'm like, no, I've read that and influenced me. Nicholas Carr, Johan Hari, they're more talking about like what it does to our attention, how it shapes our values, just technology's pervasiveness. And then I've got some philosophers on there. And Martin Heidegger has a bit of a tainted name, but I can't say that a question concerning technology wasn't influential to me and like really changed how I thought about like the character of technology. Simone de Beauvoir, as I said earlier in the previous session, about like moral ambiguity and freedom and all of that. Ivan Illich, who is a social philosopher, talks about tools for conviviality and deschooling society and issues like that. And then Albert Borgman is a philosopher I've recently started approaching, and his concept of the device paradigm was like that missing link I needed to like make this whole unfolding a smartphone thing work. So together, thinking of all these like web of ideas, my kind of belief is technologies afford and constrain. They transform the environment and they shift our social and psychological values in subtle but also profound ways, where it just really changes our day-to-day lives. So the device paradigm, real quickly, this is from Albert Borgman's 1984 book. There's two main categories. There's the focal things, and then there's devices. So focal things is kind of like, hey, these are good in his idea. The devices, these aren't so good. They do good things sometimes, but maybe not so much for human flourishing. So focal things they're bound in the world. They have a culture and a context around them. Maybe you can think of them as just like old. People engage focal things with focal practices and focal places. And like, really, I keep repeating focal because that's a big point here, is that you are focused on it. You are aware of what's happening. You are working to produce a commodity. So an example he gives is a fireplace produces warmth. Someone has to go fell the tree. Someone else is cutting the log. Someone else is tending the fire. Someone stokes it. Maybe someone's cooking food on it. There's all these activities and practices that surround it. And really this one thing, the fireplace, it can define a whole day of activity to produce this warmth. You see all the work that goes into it, and then you see the commodity that comes out. Where a device, there is no context or culture, you know. The machinery is hidden and concealed. You don't see what happens. It's this unseen labor to now procure a commodity rather than producing something by your own hand. And the example he gives to contrast it with the fireplace is central heating procures warmth. Now there's not this space where people gather around in a house and maybe share a meal or share a conversation or reflect on their day and engage in practices that are about this. They're just off in their own rooms because, hey, we have central heating. You don't have to do anything. You don't understand the labor that goes into producing that warmth. You just go and you tap a button a couple times and voila, the house is 2 degrees warmer. It's a total disconnect. So the smartphone is the device of devices. There's an app for that, you know, is like, I think that was the old Apple slogan, with each app procures its own commodity. It's like, oh, I want some music. Let me get Spotify and I will procure any millions of songs that I want. And I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about what goes into it, any of that. I think it's like 84% of American adults now own a smartphone of some capacity. It's like 97% is a cell phone. So they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous. I'm sure everyone here has one. They are central to contemporary life. Like, you really can't imagine your day now without a smartphone, probably, because you use it for so many things. It's just kind of oozed into every little nook and cranny of our life. And it's just had this transformative force on the world. You know, look at the gig economy that has exploded as a result of apps like Uber, DoorDash, Postmates, etc. All those little things of just, oh, I got this smartphone, I can work on demand. But folded into each app is just a long history of technologies and hidden machinery where you don't see all of the labor that goes into procuring those commodities. And part of unfolding a smartphone is for students to kind of peel back those gilded layers of, you know, a shiny app and see what is happening under the surface. Just appreciate just the long chain of work that people have put into to get to these things, and then maybe start rethinking through their relationships with this, of like, is there value in actually doing some of these things themselves rather than just getting an app for that? So we chose the word unfolding because it conveys this natural process that is counter to the invading virtuality of our world and just all the digital creep into everything. And unfolding unconceals, I use that word because it counters the concealing of it, or reveals all of that hidden machinery. And hopefully, you know, once you've got this unconcealed device and you see everything that goes into it, it loses some of that mystique and that hold over our captivation of just like being wowed and amazed by it, because you kind of get a sense of like, oh, I get it. I get what's going on. A session that I participated in yesterday that I observed, someone was talking about technological literacy, you know, with STEM, and not to critique STEM education, but to critique it a little, like they don't have the why right in my mind. Like, it's like, hey, teach them to do this so they can just fit into this device paradigm of, yeah, let's just produce and consume more technology. Let's produce and consume more. And it fits into this consumption model. And it doesn't get down to like this way of relating to technology and thinking about it. So that's all kind of like what has led me in my thinking to, you know, coming up with this activity and building it out. So the first 3 apps that we've developed on the, built out on the website, the first 3 apps to unfold is the clock app. So the clock app procures time, right? That's the commodity through the technologies of timekeeping, which there's going back to when humans just looked the sun to tell the time of the day, right? That's the technologies of timekeeping. It extends all the way back there. Then you've got, the Maps app, and it procures location or directions through the technologies of wayfinding and navigating, which also have their own tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of technological histories. And then there's the Messages app, which procures the commodity of communication or connection. I'm going to think in the Sherry Turkle way, through the technologies of telecommunication networks. And all of these have a long, long chain in history that lead up to that. But each of these apps, I feel like it changes our relationship to the way we're interacting with things and the way we're interacting with the world. I used to have to look outside to maybe tell what time it is a couple hundred years ago. But now I just, tap my phone and there it is. It's 11:13 Central Time. I used to have to know a place to be able to get around in it. But now, I just can flip up Google Maps and then, oh, there's the Explore thing. And it'll tell me about all the things that I should go check out. And now I don't have to talk to anybody, or I don't have to put any actual work in myself. It's just all procured for me there. And the Messages app, maybe there's some value in sitting down and actually writing a letter by hand to someone. You put a little more thought into it. You spend a little more time doing it. There's just an intrinsic value, and I'm going to dedicate and put some work into it. But, how hard is it to tap out a message? Or now, there's the auto replies of someone sends you something. You don't even have to think. You're just like, yep, sounds good. Thank you for that information. Or you've got Outlook now with their auto completes where you just start tabbing through because they're guessing what you're going to say. And it's just, where does it end? What are we going to work to make as we keep going forward? Like, what relationship is that? Like, what is there left for people to do? And that concerns me. And so that's my subjectivity. That's where I'm coming from. And that's what I'm worried about with all of this. So did I skip an act? No, I didn't. Okay. So the way each of these slides, these sites, these pages are organized is there's an introductory video and 3 main questions for students to ask and answer. Those questions are, what are the benefits of this app? Because every app has a benefit, otherwise we probably wouldn't be using it. And then, what are the downsides or drawbacks of this app? And then how does this app change the flow of your everyday life? Which that's a little trickier of a one to get at maybe. And to think through that, it's just like, what would my life be like without this app versus with this app? And then thinking back through historical technologies, like, hey, if this is all I had, how would the flow of my everyday life be different? Like, how would I organize my life? What would I focus on? Then there's about a 1-page explanation of each of the technologies behind the app. Then there's a timeline of technological developments, so that long history of leading up to the app that's in question. So those 2 things are definitely something that like each of you should explore as we go ahead and do like breakout rooms into which of the 3 apps you're most interested in exploring. And then there's about 5 or 6 other sources on there. Some are YouTube videos talking about the technology. Some are critical excerpts of books. Others are articles online. So it's kind of a scouring of things online to just see what there is else out there to help engage. The ideal audience for this is like a high school student, is where we're kind of gearing this. Is this, how can we engage high school students to start thinking about these questions and not just consume the hyper novelty? So, and then there's about 3 or 4 activities at the bottom of each page to help an educator extend the lesson. So you're going to self-select which app you would like to unfold. As I said, you should read the technologies of whatever section and the timeline of your selected app and kind of scroll through and explore what grabs you. Look at the titles of the different sources and just check them out, and then discuss your thoughts in your breakout rooms. React and reflect with each other as you go along. And people are now dropping out once they realize they're going to have to do an activity. Just boom, boom, boom. Thanks for staying, y'all too. So
Well, and some people they're just not, maybe they're able to listen during the session, and so it's people do it for different reasons.
all right, so I'm going to drop some links. So the first link there is to the smartphone, and then depending on which group you want to join, you'll click on that tiny URL and it'll have like a little Google Doc for you. And now I'm forgetting how to actually start breakout rooms because it's been a while. There it is. Okay.
If we have a small group, I wonder if we just choose one together to look at. What do you think about, instead of
Yeah,
getting?
that would make sense.
So let's just see. And so really it's up to the two guests, right? Because Ryan and I have looked at all of this really closely. So which one they want to do, and we can go look at it together and talk about it.
Do you have a preference?
I mean, I think if anything, maybe maps. I think that I say that just because out of all of those, that's the one I would most attached to. So I'd like to kind of investigate that a bit.
Yeah, that's my
Perfect.
favorite.
And
I did not get a smartphone until 2016 or 2017. I was like a pretty late adopter, and people were always like, the maps was probably the hardest app for me not to have. Like I used to like figure out where I was meeting friends or whatever, and like go on Google Maps and like print, like I'd physically print like a little Google Maps of like where I was like meeting my friends, and like navigate using like a physical printout. And everyone else was just like, I don't understand how you can live this way. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is normal. What are you talking about? Everything's fine.
And it was right. It was MapQuest too, even then, right? Like it was that like pre even MapQuest was bigger than Google Maps, I think.
Yeah, I mean, MapQuest, that definitely used to be the thing. You'd be on a road trip, you've got your, 5 pages of, directions that you're looking, having someone, or hopefully, not you as you're driving, trying to flip through the pages to figure out where you're going. But that was life. And, that again reminds me of even before that, like people having to navigate, miles and miles, going cross country and, pulling out the big maps, and like that was a completely different experience. So anywho, sounds like there is, enough to latch onto. I just wanted to clarify. So the first link is the one we should go and kind of dig into first, or is that just kind of a FYI?
That's like the landing page for unfolding a smartphone, where we're gonna add out, additional apps as our, I think our next one might be camera or music, one of those two. But this is an ongoing thing. We're continuing to build it out, but like clocks, maps, and messages, like they're just so central, I think, to how people do things and like what you use your cell phone for. So those are the first three. So the link I put there, that has it's a Google Doc that you should be able to edit. And then at the top of that, there's the link to the actual maps page, and it should, So really, we're just kind of encouraging you to look through the site, explore, discuss, and, write down some thoughts, because this is something we're going to continue adapting and updating and trying to make as like a deliverable that teachers could use in their classroom.
And Ryan, sorry, I'm multitasking, which means I'm not focusing on one thing. So I'm really just attention shifting to run the conference at the same time. Are we looking at the actual page, the unfolding a smartphone page right now, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Nina. So what we're doing right now is exploring the one of the pages that we've made for unfolding a smartphone. So on this, there's 7 different sources, and it's all about maps and the technologies of navigating and wayfinding. And I just put a link in the chat to a Google Doc where you can record some thoughts, and it has a link to the landing page for the Maps app and these sources we've compiled for an imagined student audience to engage with.
All right, I've been like watching one of the videos on maps and different projections. I like scrolled down and picked one
How's that
that's
source
interesting.
6, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun
Always
one.
a fun one.
Let me watch that now real quick. That was next on my list, but let me bump it up.
Nice.
The song lines thing of Source 2B was just like, when I was reading about that, I'm like, this is the most fascinating thing I've never heard about. Like the way the Aboriginal of Australia still know their way in the land. It's just so incredibly fascinating. It's likely the oldest memory is from the Aboriginal because they're able to describe the coastland of Australia from 10,000 years ago before the Ice Age. It's just
Oh, wow.
crazy. All right, well, hopefully you've had a good amount of time to explore several of the sources. Like to take like the last 10 minutes to just kind of talk about what you're thinking. What do you think of this activity? Is this something that has value? Would it be useful to use? What are your backgrounds? Is this something that you could see using with your students in some way or another? And just feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Yeah, real quick. Excuse me. I didn't realize I was still unmuted, which is fine. But yeah. So my background, like I said, I've got I'm on a board for a K-12 school, but I also, as my job work, I started a company where I'm basically building tech that's less, you know, harmful, right? So that's sort of the short story. I'm trying to like be concise about this. So as I look at this, I think it is a really good, tool to help folks investigate the journey of the technology as it relates to navigation. We're talking about maps and stuff like that, right? And
Mhm.
understanding it not just as a sort of as final outcome, right? Whatever the Google Maps app, excuse me, but understanding both the tech and the societal implications that led to this final outcome, which I think are really, really important. As we build new tech, as we think about what tech is necessary, as we think about, all those fun things, it's not just about either one of those sides. And so I think, like I said, there's definitely some good stuff here as it relates to uh, offering some cool nuggets along the way.
That first bullet point, of like, I don't know what I would do without GPS now. Like, I'd just be lost. I don't know who wrote that one, but it's just, I
That
wonder
was
what
Nick.
students react. I wonder what students' reaction would be like, thinking that, like, man, I don't know what I would do without GPS. My brother was perpetually lost. Like, it was, maybe he wouldn't have been though if he had been born like, earlier and didn't like just have a GPS device in his pocket.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I teach high school science. And so it's kind of neat to see a little bit of the background. I think the 3 questions that you have are really good. Like, I think that's like a simple structure. That's the sort of thing that's like really easy to like port into my classroom and be like, okay, like, what's the benefit? What's the drawback? How does it affect the flow? And that's something that could be even like a routine that you repeat like multiple times.
And yeah, that is repeated on each of them. So what would you need to make it work in your science classroom?
For me, I will say, I think the website itself is like a little intimidating because like the first thing you see is like a giant wall of text. And I like try never to give like that much. That's not true. I am intentional about when I give that much text. I don't never give that much. I in fact do give my kids like long readings. But I think somehow like having it be, because you have all these really cool videos and timelines and everything, like having it be more just cutting out some of the text at the very beginning, I think would make it less intimidating for students and easier for them to use.
I think cutting out or repositioning, right? Like something at the top that just gets them hooked in, and then now they're like, oh, okay, like I want to keep reading, right? That's I think a good thing, because a lot of folks, if they're not already as passionate or as informed, they're going to look at that and be like, I don't know if I can make it through this right now, and kind of find their way around it. So yeah, that I agree with that.
And so you're talking about the intro text, like where it says technologies of navigation and wayfinding. Is that what y'all are talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if we could even have like a student version, like a student simplified version, right? Because this is helpful for like teachers' background knowledge too. And like, some certain classes, this could be the assignment, go to the page, read everything, right? And it would probably, but I totally get what you're saying. In some cases, it's going to feel like too much. So that's a good. So I wonder if it makes sense to have like a an abbreviated student version in the anyway. It's a good suggestion.
Nina, I know you joined late, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
I think this is a good practice. And I was thinking about I look at them all as like little mini units. I do just like community work, community education, and I've been thinking a lot about maps in general, and our connection to land and place. And I like how you're touching on that. And I just added some ways to enhance that. But that I'm thinking more about like just activities to think about that connection to place, because people really, I think that's a lot of what we've lost, and a lot of where we have tensions. As I think about gentrification, as I think about roads that have split neighborhoods, I want to share a story
Yeah, sure.
that so I don't know if y'all have read the Address book. It's really lovely. It's by Dietrich Mask, and it's about the whole idea of addresses and street names. And so I was part of a book club about this, and I remembered coming to this conclusion. It was like I was the only person of color in this group, and I remember coming to this conclusion of like street names and mapping just being this colonization practice after reading it. And this one woman, this white woman, happened to just burst out about how she disagreed, and she was in a country in Africa where she couldn't get around because there was no map, and she asked for a map, and it turns out there was one map, and she had to like go to this place to look at this map, and it wasn't something she could have. And I just kept thinking about that interaction and about how, one, why didn't you just ask someone? Why didn't you just talk to people? And the act of talking to people to get places. And two, the idea that these people don't need a map. They know their place around. What? They don't need a map. You need a map. Like, so I was thinking about that in wayfinding, and there was another point I wanted to make in there. And also how we talk about, oh yeah, go ahead.
Did she ever get it? Because I mean, she made your point for you, right? So that it is colonizing, right? She wanted to be able to move without having to know people. Did she ever get it or no?
No. I was like, oh, this is not the right book club for me. But that's when I started to really think about this stuff, and also just thinking about how we actually give directions, as opposed to these navigation apps. Like someone stops me on the streets, like, where do I go? I don't always know. I might not always know the name of the street, or it might not be that important. I'll just be like, oh, you go 2 blocks, you go past that light, and you're going to turn at the sit-go right there. It's about like place. And so that's another thing I've been thinking about. I know these are just ramblings, but I've just been thinking a lot about this subject and how to talk about it. Thanks for indulging me.
Yeah, no, sorry, really quickly. I just wanted to, first of all, I'm still laughing about that book club story, but I also wanted to speak to what you just mentioned, which is, for me, I think the reason why I would struggle so much is because I am much more of a landmark person. Growing up, I think part of it was because we didn't have a car, so I was always like somebody was taking us somewhere, right? Like whatever, in a cab, in a bus, or whatever. So I never really had to pay attention to street names in a lot of cases. But as well, I'm just much more of like a visual person. So if I think about, there was something I was reading somewhere in these in this documentation or whatever, where it was talking about that, like giving directions can be about landmarks, or is much more geared towards the the street names. And it's, yeah, in my community, like you said, I don't have to memorize any of those kinds of things. I know how to get around, but it does become more challenging as you branch out around that, or as for me, even landmarks. Like I think about in a lot of communities where gentrification has happened, if I come back and now it doesn't look like the place that I lived, well, how do I navigate this place, right? It's a different it's a different animal there. So I just wanted to, it's not totally ramblings, or maybe it is, maybe we're both rambling, but it resonated.
Rambles
so.
are good.
Yeah,
Ramble on.
Yeah, that makes
There's-
sense to me. And like, to me, like kind of with all of the technologies that are here, like it's kind of like the benefit is like efficiency, but like the drawback is often like a loss of some sort of human connection. So in the case of the phone, it's like, well, now I can really easily get from point A to point B, but I'm no longer stopping to talk to someone else. And it's not even just I don't have to, it's that now it's like there's a social norm against it, and it'd be kind of weird for me to like stop and be like, hey, like, where's the thing? And the person would just be like, what's wrong with you? Like, just look it up on your phone. And so you lose that sort of spontaneous connection that you could be making. And I feel like that about a lot of technology too. Like, I don't know, there's all these technologies that like with like a dating app, it's like you're swiping right and left, and it's like you're efficiently scanning through a whole bunch of people, but then you lose the sort of like meeting people in the wild, like. And it's now even like, it used to be that there's like it's normal to talk to strangers, and now there's just it's like so weird to talk to strangers.
Yeah, it's friction now, right? Like the tech people think if you have to talk to someone else, it's introducing friction in your life, and we need to make it frictionless, right? And yeah, it's all those little interactions we've lost, but I don't know. Yeah, not everyone who wanders is lost. Thank you, Smits. I'm terrible at remembering quotes, but I was thinking that. And yeah, this is really good. You all are pushing the way we're thinking about this and what we can add and change to it. This is really, really good. But I mean, I'm just imagining, I just wish students had more opportunities to like think about this, because it does push your thinking about like, what do we actually want out of navigation, right? Is it just to get somewhere, or is it to know places and people? And I think that's what we want them to do in this. And it's been making me rethink it. And just if you need another motivator on this, I was reading Nicholas Carr's Glass Cage book, which is very good on automation. And he's talking about there's some early evidence that it actually is really like bad for our brains, that we're for the first time in history not figuring out how to get places, right? Because GPS does all the work. And so it's like it's potentially causing like early onset like Alzheimer's and things like that, because people aren't using their brains in the ways they always have. And I don't know if that's like fully proven. It's a like hypothesis, but you don't need that motivation to want to know places. But maybe just the efficiency of travel is just colonial in itself. I think that idea, we got to think about how that fits into this lesson. So thank you all for challenging us with that.
What was the name of that book that you mentioned?
Oh, and I did the blog post review, our most recent. If you go to our reviews on the website, it's called The Glass Cage. So the glass cage is the airline cockpit. And he starts with airlines as like a metaphor for automation, and like how it, like the first steps of automation. It's such a good book. The first steps of automation actually were useful. And then as it got more complex, it just has increasingly just de-skilled people to the point that we've lost like the things that make operating a plane enjoyable. Now, like a lot of airline pilots are just computer observers. You know what I mean? Anyway, I found it Nicholas Carr always pushes my thinking. The Shallows is his most famous book.
All right, so to wrap things up, loving all these conversations. This is better than I hoped. Like that point that you were making, I don't know how to say your name, starts with the M though. I don't want to butcher it. Marika, the point that you were making about it removes these burdens, it's frictionless, I think is what Dan was saying. That's that gets back to this device paradigm thing. And it's like, I think the thing that I want students to think about most is like, where do I want good burdens in my life? Like there are bad burdens that like, yeah, give me the technology to get over that. Like sewage disposal. Like I want all the burdens removed of that. But like, where are the good burdens of like stopping and talking to someone in a place to get directions rather than just where's my map? And I think that, you know, that's what I want these lessons to be, is just helping students find those good burdens. Okay. Well, thank you all. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah,
Nina,
feel-
I'm gonna be
feel
thinking
free
about
to
that
follow
book
up
club
with-
story all day.
Thank you for appreciating it.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to follow up if you're interested in talking about this more. I think if you can't tell, Smithson, I could probably do this session for 2 more hours, but we're really interested in people trying this out in formal and informal settings.
Cool.
Thank you all. This is great to meet you all too. Great job, Smiths.